Good morning. I want to welcome you. My name is Robin Frankel, and I am Vice Chair of the Friends Committee, and I'm here on behalf of Derek Rapp, who is Chairman of the Friends Committee, who couldn't be here today. But I do want to talk about the Friends Committee for just a second. It's one of the most dedicated groups of individuals and vital to the support of the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, and if you're not a member, we encourage you to become one. We have lots of different activities throughout the year, and the Conversations program, which I'll talk about in just a minute, is one of the flagship programs of the Friends Committee. We have a lot to cover this morning in fairly short order, so I just wanted to take a moment to talk about two special events that are coming up. The first, which is not technically a program of the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, but it could be of interest to or should be of interest to the women in the audience today. The Washington University Women's Society will host a program featuring a look at the research of one of our most prominent women scientists, Dr. Toni Kuchin, and that will be on Wednesday, February 18th at 9:30 in the morning, and there's more information about this program available by contacting the Office of Development at the Danforth Center. Additionally, as I alluded to before, the Conversations program will begin the 2009 series on March the 12th, and that program begins at 5 p.m. The topic will be American agriculture, and we want to thank the Boeing Company, who is the generous sponsor of the Conversations series for the past 3 years. And now, without further ado, I want to turn this over to Dr. Danforth, who will introduce the program for today.
Oh, it's a little, there you go. Thanks,
Better?
Robin, yeah. Robin, thanks very much, and thanks very much for all of you for coming here. The Friends group is a wonderful group and has been just very special to us. And this program was designed to give an annual report particularly to our Friends group who have done so much for us, and but also to anyone else who would be interested in how things are going. So I'm glad you're all here. You're very special to us. The Friends have given us, your friends have given us your faith, your energy, and your treasure. You are, in a real sense, both our family and our shareholders. As shareholders, you've earned your equity with work and with hard-earned dollars. As family, we're all friends and co-workers united in a common cause. Thus, you ought to have a report, and that's what we want to give you, of how things are going, the challenges and the triumphs, the good and the bad. That's what shareholders and that's what family deserve. After this introduction, Sam Fiorello will tell you about our administration and finances. Then Roger will report on the research and the science. After all, and that's, of course, what we're all about and what we do here. And then I'll wrap up. After that, there'll be questions and your comments. Last year, we reported on our first decade. Our report was optimistic, scientifically and financially. We're pleased by the then recent scientific review and by our financial progress. This year, you'll hear about the science and also about the effects of some things we did not foresee, the worldwide economic downturn. As a friend once said, life is what happens to you when you're planning for something else. This year, we'll hear about the ups and downs of real life. Let me remind you why we're all here, because of the basic dream that through science, that is, through deeper understanding of how things work, we, the inhabitants of planet Earth, can improve the lot of our fellow beings, including our own grandchildren and their grandchildren. More specifically, More specifically, we believe that this center can play a role in ending human hunger, in preserving and enhancing the environment, and in making St. Louis a world center for plant science, including the commercial developments flowing from that science. In short, we're trying to do something wonderful for both the world and for our home community. As you listen to Sam and Roger, I hope you'll keep these goals in mind, asking yourselves, how are we doing on our quests? We're involved with long-term goals. It's a bit like cancer research. We may see milestones along the way, but some problems will be with us for 20 or likely even 50 years or longer. So how are we non-plant scientists going to understand and evaluate? But then I think to myself that even Roger, as smart as he is, can see only dimly what the future holds. But here is the way lay people can try to understand and evaluate. Remember why we formed this center. Because we can't reach these goals by ourselves. We decided to build an institution of talented people who can do what we cannot do. We lay people can judge the progress of our center as an institution. And here are the questions that I put up last year. Have we the right people? Have we able scientists as judged by other scientists and funding agencies? Have we able, well-motivated administrative staff using the right systems? Have we the volunteers who work with us, inspire us, and make us better? Do we work together as a team? Is the whole greater than the sum of the parts? Are we working on problems that are important and that are solvable? As the great Peter Medawar once said, as politics is the art of the possible, so science is the art of the solvable. You have to try and solve something. Are our resources sufficient for the task? Are we using the resources well? Have we community acceptance? Are we making progress? And I would add the last point this year, are we planning well? What's happening with our visioning exercise? I hope after all this you'll have a clearer picture. After you hear from Sam and Roger, I will give you my take as a fellow shareholder. And now I'll ask Sam to come up.
Thanks, Dr. Danforth, and thank all of you for being here again this year. This year, again, I'm proud to be representing the Danforth Center's administrative team, and this morning I'm going to cover 3 areas: our administrative team and its philosophy, our financials, and the new research park that you see coming up out of the ground behind us. Since we met here last year, the world has experienced significant global financial and economic downturn. No one knows how long this downturn will last, or indeed if we've hit the bottom. It could end this month, this year, or years from now. We simply don't know. What we do know, however, is that especially during these trying times, organizations need discipline. When asked by a reporter what his winning formula was after his Super Bowl victory, Pittsburgh Steelers coach Mike Tomlin said, "It's 1 part dedication, 1 part focus, and a heavy dose of innovation." I like that, and I believe it's a recipe that we've used here at the Danforth Center for over a decade now. Let me touch upon each of these attributes a little bit more. Dedication. I'm so proud to be part of an administrative team that's the most dedicated bunch I've ever worked with. At just over 40 people, we're small but mighty. Focus. Our administrative team is mission focused. We work to help our organization improve the human condition through plant science. We serve to facilitate the best plant science in the world, as well as to assure we provide the highest level of stewardship for our donor and taxpayer resources. And innovation. A year and a half ago, my wife and I adopted a baby girl from China. As a gift for Chinese New Year, our daughter's nanny gave me a parchment with a Chinese calligraphy that reads, "Nothing is more important than adapting to changing conditions." I believe that saying to be especially true in challenging times like we are facing today. And I'm pleased to say that our administrative team is a group of innovators second to none. Now, culture and mantra really are important, but in the end, it's measurable results that matter. For Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, it was winning the Super Bowl. Well, we too are a results-focused organization. Here's but one example of the kinds of results-based initiatives we have undertaken. In February of 2004, faced with rapidly rising energy prices and on finding ways to conduct our business in a more environmentally friendly manner, a team led by our facilities director, Howard Beitmiller, embarked on a project to reduce our energy consumption without negatively impacting our science. After months of assessment and planning, the project laid out more than 25 action items that range from new capital expenditures like new high-throughput efficiency boilers to changes in operating procedures like more precisely managing greenhouse lighting. Since we started the project in '04, we've invested just over $500,000 to implement these changes. Over the last 5 years, these measures have led to savings of more than $900,000 in utility costs and translates into a net savings to this organization to date of $400,000. And these changes and these savings will continue to accrue to this organization for years to come. We're proud to announce that, again, last year, we outperformed our peer group in keeping our overhead costs down. In 2008, 83 cents of every dollar spent at the center was used to directly support our science. As Dr. Danforth said, that's what we're here for. This is compared to a 77-cent industry average. But keeping expenditures low is only half of the equation. We are also able to provide the highest level of customer service to our clients, in this case, our scientists. In 2008, the Scientist magazine ranked us number six in the world in their academic category for best places for scientists to work. This is something we're very proud of. The next series of slides transition us from our uses of funds to our sources of funds. We here have three critical sources of revenue at the Danforth Center. Our endowment, a source of funds intended to cover organizational costs in perpetuity, our annual giving, an annual source of institutional funding, and grant and contract awards. Important not only as a source of revenue, but because they are competitively awarded, they help tell us that our science and our scientists are among the best in the world. Let me give you some details on each of these important funding categories. Anyone who has money invested in the markets knows that 2008 was a really difficult year. Bonds were down, real estate prices plummeted, and the equity markets suffered one of their worst years on record. The Danforth Center endowment was not immune to these market downturns, and in 2008, our endowment was down 26%. I wouldn't be honest if I said this was not a disappointment. In many ways, for me, these investment declines are more difficult to watch than in my personal investment accounts. Those personal accounts have my money in them. These endowment accounts have your money, and they're intended to help cover this organizational cost for decades and generations to come. However, the message I want to leave you with here at this slide is that although not immune to these turbulent times, our endowment is in good hands. We are very fortunate to have one of the finest investment committees led by John McDonald, with his hand on the tiller, helping us to navigate these turbulent financial waters. Our portfolio is well diversified, and we have strong investment discipline guided by an investment policy document that helps us to keep our focus on the distant horizon as well as on current conditions. We continue to experience growth in our annual gifts. Gift levels have increased from $400,000 in 2001 to $1.3 million last year. This impressive increase is a tribute to your from you generous donors. It's also a tribute to Dr. Danforth, to Roger, Laura, and her development team. And of course, none of this would be possible if not for the terrific work of our volunteers, especially Derek Rapp, who leads our Friends Committee. We've all heard investment advisors telling us that a key to weathering financially difficult times is to diversify one's investment portfolio, so that when one asset class is down, others will help buoy your account. It turns out that diversification is also important when it comes to sources of sponsored research funding. Many of our peer institutions have suffered dramatic downturns in their grant awards over these last few years with declines in federal grant funding, a source of funding that for many institutions provides a lion's share of their sponsored research dollars. Fortunately for the Danforth Center, Roger and his team of scientists have done a tremendous job building a diverse and thus more stable source of grant and contract dollars. At last year's State of the Center address, we look forward to a groundbreaking ceremony. Today, we see nearing its completion the first building of what will eventually be a 3-building campus known as the Bridge Park at the Danforth Plant Science Center. The acronym BRDG stands for Bioresearch and Development Growth. It also describes the park's goal of taking advantage of the region's robust scientific capital to help plant and life sciences and clean tech companies bridge research, resources, and relationships to achieve commercial success. Featuring state-of-the-art wet labs and office space, Building 1 will be a very beautiful building, and it will represent the first physical manifestation of the dream that was articulated on paper more than a decade ago. But some of you have asked, who will occupy these buildings? The answer is that we are targeting 5 tenants. The first is a workforce development component in partnership with the St. Louis Community College. Graduates of this program, young men and women from St. Louis City and throughout the St. Louis region, will serve as a critical technical workforce for our life science industry. The second component is a commercialization/incubator center. The Nidus Incubator, which is housed at Monsanto's campus, will move to Building 1. This commercialization center is a crucial part of our goal of building homegrown companies in the region. We will also have space well suited to house companies like Derek Rapp's Divergence that have outgrown their incubator space. We hope to attract early to mid-stage life science companies to the Bridge Park from other parts of the United States and indeed the world. These are companies that will benefit from leveraging the tremendous research and business resources in our region. And finally, what we're calling a soft landing program. This program intends to attract large, foreign-based companies who wish to make a foray into the U.S. market. Bridge Park helps to soften their landing in the U.S. by providing a physical infrastructure and relationships in the field and in the region that will help to better their odds of success. As I mentioned with the previous slide, tenant makeup will range from the smallest startups to multinational enterprises. Today, Building 1 is approximately 65% pre-leased, and tenants will start to move into their new space in June. When all 3 buildings are complete, the park will hold nearly 500,000 square feet of life science lab and office space and be one of the world's largest research parks with a primary focus on plant science-based enterprises. For more information on the park, please visit the Bridge Park website at www.brdg-park.com. I want to end my portion of this briefing with some thank yous. In addition to the terrific work of our scientific team, which Roger will talk with you about in detail, I want to thank our administrative team. They're a team of talented and dedicated people, and I'm proud to serve our center's mission with them. I would like to ask the members of the admin team in the audience today to just stand for a moment and be recognized. And finally, I want to thank all of our terrific supporters, people like all of you here today. Without your generosity, your giving of your wisdom and work and treasure, the center would simply not be here today, and I thank you. And now please help me welcome our president, Roger Beachy.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks, Bill, for kicking us off well this morning. And I will also want to join them in thanking you for spending some of your time with us this morning to let you know that we can update you a bit on the center. Sam and Bill have done a great job in giving you some background, and I'll try to be as succinct as I can on the science. You know, I'd love to talk about the work of the scientists here, and I'll try to keep it as brief and to the point as I can so you don't miss your next morning appointment. We've heard and we know about the mission and the vision of the center. We know what our supporting legs of our stool are, and there's no sense. It's not necessary for me to repeat them. But just to remind you that we are dedicated to fulfilling the vision and mission that Bill and others in the team have established for us. I want to start by giving you an update of some of the changes that have happened in the center over the last year, and some of these are challenging for us, and others bring us opportunities. We've had some changes in faculty, some comings and some goings of of individuals from the Danforth Center. Ed Cahoon and Dan Schachman and Chris Taylor have all elected to take opportunities at other places and to leave the Danforth Center. We've had some changes in an appointment by one of our faculty with a very strong partner in the region. This represents an opportunity for us to create real bridges between our institute and Washington University. I'll talk about another one in just a bit. We've had a change in one of our faculty from being a USDA employee to being a Danforth Center employee as of March 1st. Dick Sayre has joined the center last fall as the director of the Enterprise Institute for Renewable Fuels and brought his research team with him and a substantial research grants portfolio. Paul Anderson, new director of the international program. Sohana Pandey, a new faculty member who has joined us from Penn State University. And Dr. Mark Mannery will become a true joint appointment with the Danforth Center as a joint between us and the Washington University School of Medicine, Pediatrics, and Children's Hospital. And in addition, we'll be adding several new faculty here to the center. One will replace Dr. Herman in the USDA laboratory, and then we look for a second one to replace Dr. Cahoon. And then a new search is underway in the center here to enlarge our own capabilities. I'm going to talk a little bit about the science now. As you know, that's why we're here and what I'm excited about. This is and sometimes when science breakthroughs happen, we end up seeing that science on the front cover of important magazines and journal articles. This is an example of one of those. Dr. Tom Smith and his colleague, Nicole, whose name you see at the bottom, Kuropatkin, was in a collaboration with Dr. Jeffrey Gordon and his colleagues at the Washington University Genomics Institute. And Dr. Gordon's specialty is to understand how the bacteria in our gut absorb food. Dr. Smith and his colleagues have uncovered something very novel in looking at the bacteria that Dr. Gordon was studying. This is a structure of a molecule that is in the surface of the gut bacteria, and that gut bacteria must take up different kind of carbohydrates from your diet. And the beauty of this molecule is that it's adaptable. It can take a carbohydrate of one kind or a carbohydrate of another kind or another, and take it into the bacteria, where the bacteria convert it into lipid molecules. They turn those back into the stomach, and then you absorb those and derive energy from that material. This is such a fascinating discovery because it shows the flexibility of function of a single protein. It was so highly recognized that it got a second write-up in Science magazine to describe the nature of that discovery. Recently, some work out of my lab culminated 20 years of effort. We really started this project in 1988, and finally discovered a breakthrough that I think might be useful in the rice-growing areas of Asia and South Asia to capture a disease that's called rice tongue grow disease. It causes stunting of plants and this yellowing. And we discovered that if we, by studying the rice plant and the genes of the rice plant, we identified a gene from rice that we simply put back into rice and caused more expression of the gene. As a consequence, instead of the plant becoming yellow, this is done in our greenhouse here, and you see these slight yellow tips on the edge of the leaves, not as dramatic as in the fields in Philippines. We find a difference in the ability of those plants to withstand that disease. This is a plant with the new gene, and this is without the gene. Our collaborators in Asia, the Philippine Rice Institute, have documented these studies in their laboratories. We're now looking for collaboration to continue in rice-growing areas of the world. And if our prognosticators are right, this will increase rice production in those areas by 5 to 10%. Not an insubstantial breakthrough, but it sort of tells us that starting from 20 years ago, how long it takes to solve a problem. And there are other examples of the scientific successes that we've had, and some of these have appeared on the cover of journals, scientific journals. This is some work from Ed Cahoon's laboratory in collaboration with Howard Berg, our microscopist, to identify changes in the in the seeds that produce oil bodies. Elliot Herman and his colleagues have developed, published a book on food contaminants. It's pretty topical given where we are in peanuts in the last few months, identifying mycotoxins and food allergens and how to address them. We're very pleased with that Dr. Herman is at the Danforth Center, of course. Several other articles appear. This is work that was done in Chris Taylor's laboratory, looking at the genes in roots and how those roots are susceptible or resistant to the attack by parasitic nematodes. Dr. Richard Sayer from Ohio, who has joined us as the enterprise director, also published the structure of an enzyme that's important in the processes that he studies in his laboratory. These kind of exposures give us higher visibility in the scientific community because of the breakthrough nature of the research that is done at the Danforth Center. Our international programs has been an important component of the Danforth Center since our inception, and I'll give you a bit of an update. Dr. Anderson joined us in early summer of last year and serves as the executive director. And his role is to establish a team of scientists and people knowledgeable in regulatory science, people who are knowledgeable in culture in Africa and Asia, the focal points of our activity, and to ensure that the projects that we do here at the center can be taken to field trials. We've talked about them for a long time, and this is an update, a bit of an update from that, and to ensure that biosafety regulations are established in those countries and that we abide by them. This year, in 2008, we had a field trial in Puerto Rico with cassava and sorghum. Both of these had to do with increasing fortify them with vitamins and increased proteins. That trial is underway, and we'll have the outcomes relatively soon. And very recently, in the last month, we've received approval, and we've been waiting for approval for a long time, approval for confined field trials of our laboratory material to be done in Africa, both in Uganda and in Nigeria. Now, approval is one thing, then getting the final permit to carry them across the border into those countries is another, but we're optimistic that those importing permits will come very soon. And we continue our discussions with the Howard Buffett Foundation on a very exciting initiative that we started several years ago and now is leading further. We'll tell you more about that in the months to come. But we'd like to establish a field site for our research and for other researchers around the world to test their products in Africa. So it'd be a great step forward for Africa and for researchers around the world who want to help Africa. The field trial in Puerto Rico has gone quite well. I want to give you a sense of how you conduct a field trial. Scientists have to get on the plane and carry these little tubes that contain miniaturized plants, carry them to the site in Africa or Puerto Rico, transfer them to soil, grow them in greenhouses, and baby them and put them in carefully into the field. And if we're successful, then those plants will live and give us the experimental result. It's a labor-intensive activity, but we are so convinced that we will not experience success unless we get on the ground in those countries, that we put a lot of effort in the international program team to have people in place who can help us with all steps, relationships in country, working with safety regulators and so forth. And we think we have the best team in the world in the academic sector to do that. We've learned by the success of the public sector, of course, companies like Monsanto and Pioneer Company, and that has taught us better how to do our job. It's an update. This is an update on a slide I showed you last year. You know that we are collaborating and providing resources to enhance infrastructures by our partner institutions. A confined field trial site. Confined is real. That's a fence, and you have to go in and out of it with approval. A greenhouse or a greenhouse kind of setting, and the tissue culture facility, sponsored through funds that have come from the Gates Foundation and the Howard Buffett Foundation. And the approved field trials that will go inside this fenced region are those that you've heard in the past. Cassava with increased resistance to diseases, cassava with increased amounts of vitamin, vitamins in Nigeria. It'll be primarily for biofortification and in sorghum and in cassava. A bit of an update on the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Institute. I told you earlier that Dick Sayer came earlier in the year and in the fall and has some current support for his research. But by having Dick here and by having the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Institute established several years ago, it has led to the engagement of other faculty in research related to energy issues. And I just want to run through I won't describe their research, but other faculty here are working in areas of science that will address energy issues. This is part of the vision that we had to establish the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Institute here. And there's a lot of collaboration amongst this team. A lot of grants are jointly awarded. They study things that are complementary to others. Tom's work is in collaboration with scientists at Washington University, Audrey Pakrasi and his team. Sam Wong, as you know, is the joint professor that we have under sponsorship of Lee and Marianne at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and Oliver Yu and his work. So we have a growing involvement of scientists here in this activity. Through this year, we have experienced some successes in grants and contracts. We're very pleased to say that while overall funding for research has dropped, we had increases last year in actual expenditures in grants and contracts by 11%. And Sam and I were looking at some pro formas of a few years back, and we're more than $2 million annually in grants and contracts that we projected we would be back in 2000. So we have been successful because of the hard work of the research scientists that are here, with an additional increase in 2009. We're reasonably optimistic in the awards of grants and contracts through through 08 and into January 09. This is the amount of award that we have received, including for some new instrumentation. And they come from a range of granting agencies and institutions, including the Gates Foundation and U.S. Agency for International Development. This is a State Department activity. U.S. Department of Agriculture, the nomenclature, National Science Foundation, and the National Institute of Health. And we've had applications continue in 09, and we're reasonably optimistic for several reasons. One, we have better teams and stronger applications as a consequence. And there is guarded optimism that the economic stimulus package and other activities in our new Congress will include increased funding for research at the NIH and the U.S. and National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy. So we have optimism. The budget that came out of committee yesterday, the Senate committee yesterday, doesn't have quite as much in it for NSF as the House version did. So we follow these, and we're hopeful that the negotiations between the House and the Senate will restore some of those. We must keep track of those kind of numbers. We must keep contact with our legislators to let them know how important this kind of funding is for not only for the survival of our center, but for the well-being and the continued growth of the American economy, and in our case, in agriculture, food, and green technologies. We continue to make progress in, as Sam said, as helping to develop St. Louis as a center for plant science. We told you a little bit about this last year. Metabolics Company has established a small team in their collaboration with Dr. Jaworski and others. FICAL is a company that produces, that studies algae, and now algae can produce renewable fuels, biofuels. It's a company that was actually started by Dr. Sayer when he was in Ohio, and they now have a team here. They will locate a growing activity to Bridge Park. We are in the final stages of negotiating for the terms of a new company, NUCO number 1, out of the Danforth Center. In this case, the Danforth Center will be a co-owner, and we will contribute intellectual property as our equity share in match for finances to come in to support NUCO 1. And within the last month, there's been a discussion on NUCO 2. The initiations discussed, the discussion initiated in fourth quarter, moving hopefully to a mid-year launch with Danforth Center Research to create new intellectual property, which would contribute to that new company. So we will keep you informed, because we think this is also part of the measurement of success of whether or not we meet all of the expectations of the founders. And lastly, just to follow up on something that Dr. Danforth mentioned, and I think we discussed this at the last breakfast meeting that we had, and that was that we were looking backward for the first 10 years of our since the center started, and looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years. Looking backward and asking what we've done right. What are the things that are challenging for us? What's the nature of the science that we've done? How well have we done it? And are we well positioned for the resources that are there and for the scientific hurdles and the challenges that we face in the scientific world? So phase one of that, and this process is being conducted by 2 of our Danforth Center Society friends. We're very pleased. They know about us, and they're doing a great job in helping us to work through this visioning process. The first has been completed. What have we learned about our accomplishments? And how do we set a vision for the future? And the second is in detailing the key strategies to help us to succeed in our, as we go forward. It's likely that we're not optimally placed. Some of the things that we do now might be somewhat diminished. Others might grow, or there might be a whole new challenge that we haven't seen that the faculty will help us to identify and thus to build on. This report from this activity will be presented to the Board of Trustees in May, and we're looking forward to their feedback as they listen to our recommendations for how we would grow and expand and look forward to the future of the focus of the Danforth Center. Now, Bill and I have been in conversations about our successors during the same process, assuming that neither of us will be in our positions forever. About 2 years ago, the board created a transition committee for long-range planning purposes. Bill and the board and I all feel that a successful transition will help to ensure a bright future for the Danforth Center, and that we should begin planning now. Bill, the board, and I believe that it will be in the best interest of the center for me to become an officer of the board in the future and to help with a successful transition when that occurs. This approach has been very successful at universities such as Washington University and at MIT. There'll be other discussions about these and related issues at the board meeting in May, and because you are our friends and you are the people that have helped us so much, you will be the first to know. So this information flow that we are doing in our planning process will be made known to you, because we want you to feel comfortable and confident that the Danforth Center remains on the right track, has the right leadership, and the scientific community that we have spawned here continues to show its excellence for the future. I'll turn it back now to Dr. Danforth, who will continue. I have to thank you again. And by the way, you saw this slide last year, and I'll probably use it again. I like it. Bill?
Thanks, Roger, for a very interesting report. You know, as you can imagine, I've heard Roger before talk about these things, but every time I hear him, I get excited again. So I hope that all of you have some answers. Soon we'll ask for comments and questions. Let me give you my thoughts. First, I remain convinced that we did the right thing in establishing our center and in choosing our 3 goals: nutrition, the environment, and building St. Louis. The promise of the science continues great. I believe the world needs us and our community needs us. Second, I'm very pleased with the progress of the science and the efforts to make the results of some of that science available to farmers here and around the world. Third, I am very pleased with the entrepreneurial spirit and with the development of the commercial space in the north 8 acres of our property. You know, that is all done commercially. We do not and will not own the building. It'll be a commercial group that's doing it and investing in it. So I'm very pleased also with the planned start of 2 new companies and with the coming to St. Louis of plant-related companies. Fourth, the financial picture is less rosy. Last year, it looked as though if we continued on the course, that by 2010, we would be in great financial shape. But in recent weeks, something happened. Our endowment has dropped, as you've heard, by just under 26%. We will not soon be able to relax and say we're there. I would add that in our decade-long history, our endowment has never been sufficient. Building it has been a high priority. I'd like to put where we are in context and mention the bright spots. First, the endowment. I had expected when we started our campaign that at this time our endowment would be just about where we are after the collapse. I thought that after our present campaign was finished, we'd have to start another sometime after 2010. Last year, I was thrilled because our fundraising was so far ahead of where we are that I thought we could do it all in one campaign. This year, I am disappointed because despite the successes of our fundraising, our endowment is not far ahead, but only where I thought it would be. We have much more work on the endowment ahead, and at the proper time, we'll probably have to do another campaign. But we're in this for the long run. We will get it done. I am also very pleased with some of the financial bright spots. First, I'd like to ask our great friend and leader, Bob Virgil, co-chair with Lee Liberman of our campaign, to make a special announcement. Bob?
Bill, thanks for giving me the pleasure of making this special announcement, and I do so on behalf of my partner, Lee Liberman, and the members of our committee as well. And it really is a special announcement. We can say that as of about 10 days ago, through the generosity and hard work of all of you and others, we have met the campaign goal to match the challenge grant of the Danforth Foundation of $62.5 million. That results in a total of $125 million having been raised, including the challenge grant. And this has been done virtually 2 years before the original December 2010 timetable. And I think that really is momentous, and I congratulate and thank all of you for your part in that. With the help of this slide, let's briefly review how this has happened. In December 2004, the Danforth Center launched its 6-year campaign called Campaign for a Green Future when we received a $50 million challenge grant from the Danforth Foundation. So the goal was set to raise a total of $100 million, including that grant, by December of 2010. Then, by January of 2007, something truly spectacular had happened. Namely, thanks to everyone's generosity, and particularly that of the Taylor family, with its gift to endow the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Institute for Renewable Fuels, that initial goal of $100 million was met. Recognizing that attaining an endowment that would ensure the center's long-term viability now was within reach, the Danforth Foundation increased its challenge grant by $12.5 million. And we set a new campaign fundraising goal of $62.5 million, or $125 million in total, by 2010. And as I said at the beginning, 10 days ago, it's that goal that has been met. But as Bill has discussed, we cannot as yet declare final victory. We have to stay at it, continue this campaign until the end of 2010, perhaps even mount a new campaign after that in order to make up for the decline that has occurred in the value of the endowment. I think the very fact that we have realized the original goal 2 years in advance should hearten us that we can get that job done. We have an inspiring mission, world-class scientists, wonderful science in progress, a great team running the center, a terrific group of friends, and best of all, we have all of you and others, your generosity, your volunteerism, and your commitment. So on behalf of the center and St. Louis, I thank you for all you've done and will continue to do. Bill?
Well, thanks, Bob, and thanks to all of you. I think that is a great record, and we would even have a bigger celebration if the market hadn't gotten in the way. So it's important that we continue our campaign through 2010. I'm happy that we can do so, knowing that we have achieved the match. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Importantly, as income from grants continues to be ahead of projections, we can feel very good about that. As you've just heard from Roger, you'll remember that this income supports the research projects of the scientists. Grant income is awarded competitively to the best scientists for the best projects. So let's show appreciation to the scientists for the quality of their work and their success in getting it funded. Finally, and very encouraging to me, thanks to you, to your generosity and hard work, and the generosity and hard work of the friends who are not here, our annual gift support exceeded our optimistic projections. It would take an endowment of almost $29 million to provide what you have given and raised in annual support last year. And I've not even put a value on the volunteer time that has gone into making our center successful, time spent serving on committees, making phone calls and visiting on behalf of the center, conducting tours, and so on and on. When we have needed you, you have been there, and I thank you. I could stop with that, but I'll add a few additional comments. Our nation, and indeed the world, faces tough economic times. Life in the next few years will certainly not be easy. But I have faith in our country. We've come through tough times before, and we will this time. And I hope be stronger because of it. My friend George Capps used to tell me that fortunes are made by what people do during depressions, not by what they do when the economy is booming. I would say the same for institutions. I believe that Plant Science Center will be stronger because of what we do in these coming years. I hope that you will work with us to turn that belief into reality. We're blessed with the world's greatest volunteers and an able, hard-working Friends Committee and outstanding officers. Because of you, we sleep better at night. Because of you, we're planning for a wonderful future. In closing our presentations, I'd like to ask Laura Chauvin and her hardworking team, who make raising annual support so much fun, to come up here and lead a round of applause for you. Thank you, and thanks to Laura and her team. We will now take questions, and I will start by recognizing whomever has the first question or comment, and ask Roger and Sam to come up so that you can hear from the real people. Yes.
If you have specific legislative issues that you need us to communicate to our Congress people, is that, I haven't gotten anything particular that says, write your congressman about this. I'm sure we would all do that. If you could-
I will answer that. When I first got involved, I discovered that the Agriculture Department does not manage science very well, not nearly as well as the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. So we worked very hard to change that, and with the help of Kit Bond, Claire McCaskill, and others, we did get legislation in the last Congress to establish a National Institute for Food and Agriculture. And now the new administration has to really get it started and appoint the first leader, but also it needs funds. Now, to put this in perspective, the National Institutes of Health spends $14 on research for every dollar spent by the Department of Agriculture. And on the most effective research, putting out RFPs and having competition, the National Institutes of Health spends $150 for every dollar spent by the Department of Agriculture. Now, I love medical research. I'm happy to see it have more money, but it's out of balance. The agriculture is very important to the health of the American people, to our economy, to our environment, and it's all out of balance. So, sure, you can write your congressman or your senator and say that we really have to get this agriculture research going and going well. Yes?
You mentioned that we're competing for talent and resources, for philanthropic grants and other monies. What kind of metrics are you using to compare yourself with the other people in your same business? And where do you stand in terms of maintaining or developing a leadership position?
In the science, from the science perspective or the financial grants perspective? Those are two different.
Science is just one component
Right.
of your development.
The,
An
the-
ongoing revenue stream.
In past years, we've shown a graph that compares our sources of income for grants, for supportive research with other institutions that we compare ourselves with. And these are institutions that are primarily devoted to plant sciences. Now, two of those four institutions have very large endowments, and each of the scientists gets quite a dollop or an income, a budget every year from those foundations that support them. This is the Carnegie Foundation at Stanford and the Noble Foundation in Ardmore, Oklahoma. The Boyce Thompson Institute at Cornell University is different because they get quite a bit of state support for theirs. So we're the only truly independent plant science center. Others have other sources of income. If you look across those, we are much more diverse in our income stream, in our sources of grants and contracts. That makes us very different. And we are that way because of our mission. We're not simply an institution of basic research, but we're to accomplish something that gives us new opportunities at the Gates Foundation and the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Department of Energy, even the Department of Defense. So we have different opportunities for grants and contracts because of the makeup of our scientists based upon the mission of the center. Does that help?
Very good, thank you.
I just might add that the scientists do very well in obtaining federal funds or private funds when compared with scientists in other institutions, particularly those working in agriculture, who it's harder to get funding for than, say, biomedical research. On the looking at private funds, because of our wonderful volunteers, if you look at the fund raised compared with the amounts cost of our development office, we are way ahead of any place I know.
Ted.
Yes. Hi, Ted.
What are the objections from foreign countries for research in their particular country? And secondly, a question directed to Sam, how is Honda going to be involved?
So the answer to the first question is, because of the nature of how we've evolved and matured in the last 4 or 5 years, we've focused on specific countries rather than trying to spread ourselves like a peanut butter, like butter across a number of states. We've focused on the area and those countries where we are likely to be most impactful, Uganda and Kenya being the two that we've worked on. We have had a number of scientists, trainees that have come here, a number of senior policymakers, including ministers of agriculture and environment, visit here. And that familiarity has led to a better welcoming of us in their community. More importantly, our team that travels there from the international department are working with their regulators, with their people on the ground who make the confined field trials. It's that familiarity that has been extremely helpful to us in the last several years that we did not benefit from before that time. We've learned a lot, and relationships are key, but what is really key is to have people on the ground who have been through the Danforth Center and buy into what we're doing, and they make it their own. When that happens, the chance of success rises. Sam?
Ted, on the Honda example, it's not how they will be involved, but how they might be. And this is what happened, and this is an example of our aspirations for the soft landing component. Honda Motors, as you can imagine, has a large research enterprise that looks at alternative fuels for their automobiles. All of that is done in Japan. There's a subsection of that that is a biofuels, plants to fuels division. I talked to a friend of mine who knows the director of that. I sent an email saying, you don't have a presence in the U.S., you can, instead of building your own facility, very expensive, especially in these down economic times, perhaps you can look at taking part of a building, a floor of a building on this research park, and getting a foothold in this market, and being close to the Danforth Plant Science Center and the Enterprise Rent-A-Car Biofuels Institute, and having immediate connections with leaders in the field. And his response back was, let's continue to talk. So that is the kind of thing that we will continue to do in the next days and weeks and months and years, is reach out to companies like that and try to create a win-win. And hopefully, if they do come and they have a foothold and things go well, Honda will look at building their own building here and then really making St. Louis their presence for the U.S. Alternative fuels research. So.
Yes.
Yes, I was just, I guess this might be an off-the-wall question, but have they produced anything that generates an income? In other words, I realize that's not your goal, but is that a hope to produce something that might actually be commercially feasible?
There are several ways that scientists can participate, and the Danforth Center participate. We do file disclosures of inventions, and then file patent applications. But we do a good bit of market survey at the same time. We want to know that what we've invented is interesting and would be licensed by the private sector. And there have been licenses that have been cut. Now, royalty income from those licenses will be recognized when a product is sold on the market. So it's some time out. Even though we might have licensed them, before we would see revenue will still be a number of years, perhaps 5 or 6 or more years. On the other side, the new companies that we anticipate being started, we will have equity positions in those companies, so we would realize profit when there's an exit strategy for those new companies. So this is in the future, and we don't plan any of our budget in anticipation of royalties or other license income. We found it, we can't predict it. It's better to encourage it but not plan for it.
We would love to have lots of income, but that's not our mission. Our mission is to do something else, and it's a byproduct of that mission. If there are no further questions or comments, thank you all again very, very much. You honor us by coming, and we hope to see you back soon. Well done. Well done. Terrific. Those are terrific. Terrific remarks.